a dog, him a go turn man bite you. And if you jump out the frying pan, I know you jump in a fire.
Greetings from Castle Goring, from Nikki, Aurora, and from me. The first two matters that I am going to cover today are not one specific question, but several people have asked me, some have even written in to ask me through my office. And so I'm going to answer. It is the announcement that the palace made about the king living as normal a life as he possibly can with cancer. Now, I've been asked, do I know what cancer he has? Yes. Am I going to say what it is? No. Why? Because if he wants to say it, he can say it. I know there is a school of thought that thinks that a public figure, especially somebody who is a head of state or possibly will become a head of state or is a senior royal, should have no privacy whatsoever. I do not agree with that. I have had my privacy violated in the most appalling way, starting when I was 25 years old, and I have never forgotten it, and I never will. And I would not do it to anybody who deserves to keep their privacy and who is not phonying their way across the world stage trying to dupe everybody. I think one has a duty to call time on phony acts, but also I think one has a duty when people are actually trying to lead their lives with dignity, that some of their wishes should be respected. I know there is a school of thought that says that the king should be completely forthcoming. I don't think he needs to be. I will say that the form of cancer he has, which I've said before, and I'm going to say it again, and I'm the only person, as Dan Wooten pointed out the other day, who has been saying all along that he would be living with cancer as opposed to being cured of cancer. And now the palace has confirmed it. Why has the palace confirmed it? Because it means that his actions have, to a certain extent, to be curtailed. He can't go away for any length of time because the forms of cancer that he has require a certain sort of treatment at a fixed space. I don't want to say more than that. My understanding is that he has a form of cancer that is nowhere near as lethal as some of the forms of cancer that have been bandied about. But of course, there's no such thing as a particularly desirable form of cancer. But if you're going to have a form of cancer that is treatable, that he's lucky, because that's the sort of cancer he has. And also it has spread, and it has spread to somewhere that on the face of it would seem to be very ominous, but not when it is a secondary cancer to his primary cancer. It is also very amenable to treatment. He intends to lead as normal a life as possible. He is in fine shape. He's always been, as was his father. His father lived with ill health for years. And look at the age he died at. I mean, it's conceivable that the king could actually end up dying down the line of something entirely different. The forms of cancer he has are amenable to treatment as opposed to being amenable to being cured. And he has the finest treatment at 2 top hospitals in this country. in London, to be particular. And he is, let me find a delicate way of putting it. He is fit. He has always been fit. He's always eaten sensibly. He's actually sometimes been rather eccentric in his eating habits, rather more eccentric than I would be, let me put it that way, or than practically anybody else I know. But he has, it's certainly standing him in good stead now. And sometimes he looks better than others. Sometimes there's a little hiccup. But there is no reason why he can't go on for hopefully a considerable length of time, because he is not only receiving the best treatment, but his doctors are the top cancer doctors in the world, and they are on cutting edge with all different sorts of regimens, shall we say. So that's the first thing. The other thing that people have been asking me about is my opinion of Meghan's confession on the Confessions of a Female Flounder, about the fact that, well, when you've decided on a name for your child, and I'm not going to say whether it's a child that you carry yourself or you get someone else to carry, and maybe you even get DHL to deliver it for you, or maybe the stock. But who's going to be sort of middle class about it all and breed their own baby? And just, well, those of us who are classy are far too elegant for that sort of thing, aren't we? Well, of course, though, that's what people think, but maybe I'm different, because remember, although I'm very classy and elegant, and although there's no two ways about it, that I believe I'm being on the cutting edge of all things, but the fact of the matter is, I'm so fabulous and happy, and the fact of the matter is that to be able to have my progeny in the line of succession, I had to pop it out, right out of my little tum-tum. And that's why my little tum-tum became such a big tum-tum. And that's why I was pregnant for 36 months each time. But putting that aside, I also, as I just confessed on Confessions of a Female Flounder, or is it a female flounderer, that when you have a name that you want to name your baby, you've got to hug it to yourself. Don't tell anyone else, and just name the baby. My God, did I just give myself away? Did I just admit that all those stories that emanated from the palace and royal circles, that Harry's grandmother didn't approve of the Lilibet's name, and we sprang it on her, that have I just admitted that that's true? Oh dear. The problem is with being so loquacious is my mouth does run away with me. It's rather like a lavatory that once you flush it, it can't stop running. And that's my mouth as well. And yes, she has admitted, or let me put it this way, she has as good as admitted that neither she nor Harry actually asked the Queen's permission. As I was told, and I said at the time, I was told by somebody very close to the matter that the Queen was furious and horrified. She was under the impression, very late in the game, incidentally, they sprang even that on her, that they wanted to name the baby after her. And of course, this was like 2 minutes before it was announced that the baby had been named, but not after her pet name. And she had said, in the position that she was in, she had little choice but to say, oh yes, thanks. But I gather she didn't even actually put it quite like that. I think I'd better not say what I was told. Let me put it this way. She assented without consenting. She wasn't going to cause a fuss, because let's also not forget, by then, not only was the Queen aware of the fact that the pregnancy with Archie had been highly irregular, and that Harry and Meghan had told a whole heap of lies about the birth of Archie, and some of which were very easily provable, and there was considerable reserve as to the extent to which the family should go along with Harry and Meghan's assertions with regard to the arrival of either child. But Meghan and Rachel Zane, slap him once, slap him twice, slap him again. Meghan Markle, Rachel Zane knows that when you provide what is on the face of it a valid birth certificate, that unless there is a legal challenge mounted, the birth certificate has to be accepted. But you do remember that the palace announcement was not that the baby had been born to. It was that the baby had been born for. And I made the point at the time. And also, Lily was kept out of the line of succession for quite a long time. Now, do you think that might have had something to do with the fact that the reason why she was being kept out of the line of succession was that they were making Harry and Meghan jump through hoops to prove with all the paperwork that the child was genuinely of her body? Well, of course, Meghan's very resourceful, and there's absolutely no doubt that she produced both those babies right out of her body. I mean, the fact of the matter is she gained 65 pounds with each of them, and stick arms, stick legs, high heels, and notice in the podcast as well, she makes the point that Harry had to be rescuing her because in the high heels, she was in danger of losing her balance and tipping over forwards. However, if you look at the photographs of Meghan, very pregnant, the fact of the matter is she is in high heels, and not only is she in no danger of losing her balance, but she shows how brilliant her balance is by going down on her haunches in those high heels with her legs tightly shut together. Harry no more than 18 inches away from her. He doesn't help her down, nor does he help her up. So why is she now making the point that she had to be hanging on to Harry and she was just in danger of toppling over? No, Meghan, you weren't. The photographs show it very clearly. So yet again, she is showing us that she listens to what is said about her, and then she tries to correct the errors that people have made, except we know they're not errors, and we're not going to be corrected when we are speaking the truth. And it looks as if Megsy baby certainly doesn't seem to have much of an acquaintanceship with the truth. So, but yes, to answer the questions that I have been asked, she has given the game away. Yet again, the woman hasn't yet learned that the more she opens up her mouth to counter the suspicions, is the more embedded they become in the public consciousness. And she is actually proving that people's suspicions are well founded. Jane Rochester said, "Word here in the States is that her behavior and plagiarized content on the second half of her series has caused Netflix to investigate and pull dollars and her control out of the refilming of segments for the fall presentation. Also, she is being rejected by many other studios for voiceovers, cameos, commercials, and series. Blacklisted. Really hope that's all true and she has earned the bad reputation. Thanks, Lady C. Let us know what you have heard. Love to you and your fur babies. My fur babies send love. And is not my Mickey wonderful? She's the most wonderful girl on earth." Yes, I've heard pretty much the same thing. And I've been saying it for some time. Meghan is toxic. Meghan has a toxic reputation. Nobody save Ted Sarandos, who's in bed with Meghan commercially and figuratively, and therefore she sinks, he's worried, he sinks, so he's trying to keep her buoyant, but not to the extent that Netflix will fund the lines of produce that she is intent on coming up with. And I'm going to tell you a little secret. She would have to, or Netflix would have to, buy in all of the produce of the original line of Was Never. On the other hand, if she can cut a deal with some manufacturer, maybe even in China, clothing manufacturer, or somebody who's going to do a line of plates, or a line of cutlery, very classy with a capital K. And I won't cock my finger because I don't want to disturb Mickey. But let's imagine the cocked finger as we take tea, because we're so classy. The fact of the matter is, she is evidently in touch with third and fourth tier manufacturers to try to come up with something that is going to make her hopefully enough money to keep the wolf from the door, except they are living way above their means and their earning capacity has never been anything akin to what they have said it was, and it is diminishing as I speak. It's actually diminishing quicker than I speak, because as everybody knows, I don't really speak that quickly. So, GGZX says, "Lady C, you are a treasure. Never miss your videos." Thank you. A question. Curious about the Twitter post from Kensington Palace that came out at around 3 a.m. with Archie's delivery, apologizing for confusion and mentioning the surrogacy. We know it was withdrawn quite soon after it was posted. Did anyone ever officially address this from the palace at the time? I think this is hugely significant. Even if the account was hacked or an inside staff member had done this, surely the palace would explain or make a statement, as it is very unusual and the subject was controversial. I don't remember anyone addressing this on the record at the time, which really is quite amazing. Actually, it's not at all amazing. It was so extraordinary that there was no way the palace was ever going to address it officially, and they never have addressed it officially. They completely ignored it and they took it down. Was it hacked? Was it someone at the palace? Was it somebody who Meghan and Harry had antagonized? Was it somebody who was clever enough to make a grammatical error so that the second or third sentence, I don't remember which one it was, that began not with a capital letter, but with a lowercase letter, thereby giving the palace the ability to say, if they chose to do so, well, you see, it can't be from the palace because it's not even grammatically correct. So there's that to consider. I have addressed it at the absolute senior level at the palace. I did it while the late Queen was alive. It certainly didn't stop her from allowing me, in fact, allowing me to have the honor of being the only writer for both her 95th birthday and her jubilee to actually do the limited edition of her stamps and the text surrounding the stamps and the significance of the stamps, which was a great honor. And the fact of the matter is that I did approach the palace about this, and may I say, the protocol is you do not actually say exactly to whom you spoke, okay? And I am not going to breach protocol in this regard, certainly not at this time. I would breach it if they started to tell lies, but until then, I'm not breaching it. Lies meaning if they said, oh, X, Y, Z, A, B, and C, whether about me, related to me, or with nothing to do with me, but what I know to be untrue. But they haven't done that. And so they are holding up their end of the honourable transaction, so to speak. And I am holding up my end of it as well. And the fact of the matter is that it was basically dismissed as, well, you know, it's easy for people to have access to. So they were implying, without absolutely categorically stating, that it was a hack. And was it really a hack? Certainly, the story was that it was a hack. And I think we can safely leave it at that at the moment. There was no way the palace was ever going to address that officially. Also, let me point out to you that it is possible that that was the first time that the palace became aware of the fact that there was a problem and that there was a discussion out there in the public domain about the fact that Meghan might have used a surrogate. And I just throw this out as speculation because I am not going to violate certain protocols by making absolute assertions. But why would anybody at the palace have known or suspected that Meghan was not pregnant. Think about it. The business of Birkenhead was not particularly invasive, and the business at Birkenhead was Harry and Meghan, and this is my interpretation, and I say this for legal reasons, that it was Birkenhead that triggered Harry and Meghan's terror of the press and terror of the press making assertions as to whether she was pregnant or not. And that continued for the remaining 4 months of the pregnancy. But it's one thing to hear, as indeed I did. I heard about Birkenhead from one of the journalists who was there and who's a friend of mine. I heard about Birkenhead right after it happened. And I thought, oh, that's just crazy. And my impression, let me be slightly vague about this, is that the palace was of the same opinion. But once that hack, let's leave it at that, once that hacked confession was published, at that point, red flags not only had to be raised, but they had to be acknowledged. And remember, within a matter of days, I think it was 13 days, after the birth was registered, it was amended. Meghan said the palace made her amend it. The palace said they did no such thing. She elected to do it. But that, and I have it somewhere still, that posting, very interesting, very telling. And of course the palace was not going to be crazy enough to address it. I mean, you sooner address trivia than momentous things like the fact that people think and are accusing you of having faked a pregnancy, because that's what people were doing in that post. So, in fact, they asserted that she had produced the baby by a surrogacy, which meant clearly that she had faked the pregnancy and that she had been flaunting her baby bump around for months in the most excruciating way and causing considerable embarrassment publicly. But people close, sometimes the closer you are to a situation is the less likely you are to actually see it for what it's worth until it slams in your face. I hope you get my drift. Jude 74 says, I knew they were in financial trouble when I saw the mansion in Montecito cost as much as what he had inherited from his mother, meaning that the money that they are living on now are what they made from those 2021 deals that are now dead or dying, not to mention the incredible of some, there's a word missing, the incredible amounts that they spend on ridiculous legal suits, etc. There's probably blown through at least 20% of what they made with those nonsensical lawsuits. Considering they have a huge staff and even more security than necessary, they are on the road to bankruptcy. Jude, well spotted. Well spotted. The fact of the matter is, Harry and Meghan are in deep financial trouble. First of all, they bought a house with a large mortgage that has huge taxes on it and costs a lot to maintain. They thought they could embarrass the family into paying for their security, or alternatively, force the family into restoring his IPP status so that the American state would have to pay for their security, but they need their security. Now, my understanding is that their security is a lot slimmer on a day-to-day basis than you would be led to believe. The 4-car convoys are for show. But they also need security so that they can convincingly argue that they need it, especially with the lawsuits that Harry undertook. But it's not only, let's remember, it's not only the lawsuit against the Home Office, and Harry will have to pay millions, but it's also the other lawsuits that he has lost. Let's not forget that. I have been told that there are claims being made that they're worth 100 million. I'm worth 500 million. And take it from me, I'm certainly not worth anything even approaching that. Well, even if you lop off a zero, I think I'd struggle. So, Harry, if he's worth 30 or 40 million, in total, he's worth a lot. And I agree with you. Their lifestyle may suggest one thing, but the realities of buying a house with a mortgage, etc., and always catching lifts on people's planes, to the embarrassment of many people who then avoid them like the plague. Oh, I have a plane. I'd better not ever be in the same room as those dreadful Sussexes, several people have been saying for some time now. I said this quite a long time ago because some friends of mine live in Montecito and they are very familiar with the whole of what has been going on. So I leave it at that. Christine Fowler says, can any obstetrics and gynecology, this is in the American style, and I'm sorry, I don't know how to do the American style. Professional, please advise if it's like that geriatric first-time mothers with a 65-pound weight gain would normally be advised to be induced on her due date rather than allow the pregnancy to continue for a further week. Surely allowing the birth to be overdue would increase the risk of health complications to mother and child. Christine Fowler, well spotted. Thank you so much for that. Absolutely. There's no way that any responsible obstetrician or gynecologist with a geriatric mother, which is what Meghan was, she was in her late 30s, would have been allowing her to gain a grotesque amount of weight, have 2 epidurals, bounce on a ball, give birth in water after epidurals. Can you imagine? After you have an epidural, and let's remember, the epidural goes straight into your spinal fluid. Which responsible hospital would actually be crazy enough and irresponsible enough and commercially insane enough, not to mention medically irresponsible enough, to allow a woman whose spinal fluid could be affected by bacteria from the water in the bath. And then she's released 2 hours later. And of course, she walked out doing the cha-cha in high heels. I'm just so clever. I'm just so brilliant. I have to tell you, nobody does it better than I. And that's why piggies fly. There's no way. The more she embellishes stories to counteract public observations, is the more she gives herself away with ever more incredulous versions of the tale. Barbecue says, "Hello, Lady C. About Harry's court cases demanding security. Could you say whether he's able to appeal again? He said he'd go to the UK PM and the Home Secretary to step in. Does he have a legal right to do that?" Well, anybody has a legal right to do that. Whether the Home Secretary or the Prime Minister would step in would be another matter. They certainly would not be allowed to step in. The executive and the judiciary in this country are entirely separate. And although the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has breached that, shall we say, barricade by instructing the judges who were trying the protesters at Southport to give them substantial prison sentences and cleared out the prisons to make sure that they would do so. And although they obliged, there is little political gain for either him or the Home Secretary in terms of beating the drum against the Home Office for Harry. Harry thinks because he and Meghan are very leftist in their rhetoric, although they're very right-wing, reactionary, authoritarian, dictatorial in their actions. So they are anomalous from that point of view. But there is no way that the Prime Minister or the Home Secretary would be stupid enough to get involved in something that would damage them, unless, of course, they felt it was going to damage the royal family more. But this is not the case, because if they got involved, they would be having to criticize the judges. And Keir Starmer was the Director of Public Prosecutions. He's not going to be criticizing the judges on Harry's behalf. And Harry understands that he was on a losing wicket. Oh, I'm sure he could have taken it further. He could have taken it right up to the European Court of Human Rights, which we are still tied to at this point. But let's not forget, he's lost huge amounts in other law cases, including against News Group. Let's remember all of that. Harry has been losing a great deal of money. And you see, Harry and Meghan, or Meghan with Harry tagging along. So, well, I'm just a financial genius, and everybody's just waiting to bow down and make me a star, and they're just fascinated by us, H. I mean, they just love us. And, well, the few who don't, I mean, they make a lot of noise, but they don't count. You got $1 million from JP Morgan. We got a good 20 or 30 million from Netflix. We put a 1 in front of it, but am I not clever? I know how to dupe. Yes, I do. I mean, big yourself up and act as if, and then the fact follows. I mean, I acted as if I was a hot chick, and look, I landed myself a fox of a prince. I'm so clever. But turns out she's not so clever in terms of business, nor is she so clever in terms of popularity, nor is she so clever in terms of in advising Harry to be a winner on his lawsuits. Now, on the other hand, Monsieur Sherborne is absolutely thrilled. And that brings me to Tracy B, who says, "Good afternoon, Lady C. Good afternoon, Tracy B. Any update on the Gailand situation? Love your commentary." Yes, there is an update on the Gailand situation. It is horrific. It is a total abuse of the law and of human rights and of anything smacking of decency. And Stéphane Guerlain, if you think I'm defaming you, sue me. I invite you to sue me. I will see you in a court of law in England. You may be able to throw your weight around in the small section of Versailles where you use your position as a lawyer and you use your name, the family name that you never contributed to. Your father contributed to, but you never did. But you have benefited from it like yet another Nepo leech, in my not so humble opinion. Do you know what Stéphane Guerlain has done? He got the court to agree that he should charge, I think it's $150 a day, to Christina, his father's 2 decades long partner's horses that were stabled on his father's land. He actually ended up buying from under his father the house and some of the surrounding land, doubtless for a song, according to him, because the estate was running low on money. Well, my understanding is that LVMH, for the whole of his father's life, is obliged, I should say, to give his father an income of $1 million, euros per annum. But I think he is on something like 100 euros a week. So that's like 5,200 euros per annum. All the staff, all the old-time staff have been dismissed. Chauffeur, cook, Stéphane's own childhood nanny who had worked with his father thereafter was dismissed. The whole lot of them. Let's go. Oh, I'm Meghan. Oh, I'm Pontius Pilate. I'm Stefan Gailand. Well, the judgment was that he could charge her $150 a day. No, if I said a week, I meant a day. 150, not dollars either, euros, sorry. I think more in terms of dollars and pounds than euros, even though I did have a place in France for 14 years, actually 2 places, but we won't go there. And I mean, figure that out. But it was the stables, her lawyers pointed out to the court, he had no right to charge anything because the stables were not on the land that he had bought from under his father. They were on the land that his father still owned. So what did he do earlier this week? He sent in people to remove the doors from the stables so that, and when Christina went to see her horses, no doors, no nothing. She then discovered he had moved them back to the more luxurious stables nearer the house. The ones that he had put up barriers against for some considerable length of time, so that neither she nor his father would have accessibility easily to the horses, and his father wouldn't be able to see the horses, which he has loved all his life, because his father was a famous equestrian and Christina was a well-established equestrienne. So he's moved the horses back onto the more luxurious stables because that's the land that he now owns. I mean, this is such an abuse of process. This is such manipulation. This is such elder abuse. Because neither Christina nor his father is a spring chicken. It is absolutely outrageous behavior. The gendarmerie have been called in. They were absolutely horrified to hear what had happened. Of course, Bernard Arnault and LVMH are completely ignoring the situation, and they will continue to ignore it, as will much of the mainstream media, because the mainstream media don't want to antagonize Bernard Arnault because they want LVMH's advertising, because the mainstream media are in huge problems financially. It's not like 30 years ago. The internet has created absolute havoc in the mainstream media's financial tallyings and ruined their income. Everywhere is maybe 10 times less well off than they would have been had things remained what they were 20 and 30 years ago. So there are strong incentives and motivation for LVMH to remain aloof from their duty to preserve the rights of somebody who was on their board. They're not doing the decent thing. And the press are not doing the decent thing because the press are worried that LVMH will pull advertising from them. But The gendarmerie are now involved. I did say to Christina, I said, it's all very well that they're so horrified at the moment. Hopefully they'll be horrified in 2 weeks from now, or 3 weeks from now, or a month from now, when word comes from on high, ignore it, ignore it. He's soon going to be dead, and our boy Stefan wants to get rid of her. The whole thing is a total shocking disgrace. I think it's a disgrace that any son can behave like that towards his father and his father's partner of nearly 2 decades, irrespective of whether he likes her or not. I mean, the things he said about her, none of which are true. I mean, she was an extremely successful businesswoman in her own right, but not if you hear what he says. I mean, you can read some of it in the Times. He called her a 5-letter word beginning with W, which is totally untrue. Totally untrue. So, he's a nasty piece of work, and quite frankly, the French system is failing his father, and so far it has failed both his father and Christina. Hopefully, now that the gendarmerie are involved, because he did not have the right to do what he did. I mean, but he shades of Meghan and Harry. He's a nepo baby who thinks he can just do exactly as he pleases, and so far he's got away with it. So that's the latest update on that. And thank you very much for your questions. Thank you very much for all of this. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please keep the questions and comments coming in so I will know what you would like us to be speaking about. Okay? Thank you so much. Take good care and Godspeed. And if you have truly enjoyed this, would you care to like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell, and God bless. Bye-bye.